Welcome back. I hope the break has provided your brain with lots of oxygen, so what I'm talking about can actually make sense to you. What we're looking at now is we are going to look at what the different systems in the body can actually do in order to make sure that the internal environment or the environment of the cells has got all the correct substances that the cells need to survive. In other words, how do the different systems that you looked at this year, how do they participate in homeostasis? Because after all, you are made of cells, and it's very important to keep your cells alive because that keeps you alive. So what we're going to look at now is what body systems play a role in homeostasis. So if we have a look here, which body systems are important for homeostasis? First of all, this is the external environment. That's the air around us. This little suitcase actually represents you. And what's inside the suitcase is what is inside you, and we call that the internal environment. In other words, the substances that are inside you. In other words, the substances that surround the cells. And remember, we said the tissue fluid surrounding the cells must have the correct amount of food, oxygen, carbon dioxide, mineral salts, etc. And the different systems you've looked at this year all play a role in keeping those little cells alive. One system that you looked at last year was the circulatory system, which is blood, and all of the substances we're talking about are actually carried around the body in the blood. So that is very important because if our bodies need more substances, we can speed up our heart rate to get the substances to the cells more quickly. But let's focus on what we have looked at in our grade 11 year. Okay, first of all, there is the digestive system, and the digestive system takes in food, the food moves along, the food gets digested, the unabsorbed substances get passed out, and the useful substances then go into the blood. And what do we mean by useful substances? The broken down food, glucose, amino acids, etc. So the digestive system provides the blood with food. The second system that you looked at is the respiratory system. And the respiratory system's function is to take in oxygen and then put oxygen into the blood and remove the carbon dioxide. And if you have too much carbon dioxide in your body, you will start breathing faster so that you will then have the right amount of carbon dioxide in your body. Third system, which plays a role in homeostasis, is the urinary system. And the urinary system takes waste out of the blood and gets rid of it, but it also keeps the balance of water and minerals in your body. So what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at how each one of these systems plays a role in making sure that the internal environment of your body, the environment of the cells, has got everything the cells need to survive. We're first going to have a look at what does the urinary system do. And first of all, the urinary system controls 3 important substances. It keeps them at the correct level. First of all, it removes all the waste. And that's actually an easy job because all the waste is taken out of the body and it's removed in the urine. The next two functions are not quite as easy because it has to control the salt or ionic balance of the blood. And here, there's got to be salt in the blood. There's got to be sodium. There's got to be magnesium. There's got to be potassium. But oops, not too much, not too little. So maintaining the balance, it's not doing the same thing every day because one day you'll have slop chips and you'll eat lots of salt and your kidneys will then have to remove the excess salt. On another day, you won't eat much salt, so your kidneys won't have excess salt to be removed. And that's why it's not a particularly easy job, and you might remember that the amount of salt kept in the body is controlled by a hormone called aldosterone. And you can think of aldosterone as the save salt hormone because your body will produce it when you are short of sodium in your body. Then the third, and this is very important, it removes excess water, thus controlling the blood pressure by a hormone called ADH. And we are going to be looking at ADH in a bit more detail because that's quite important in homeostasis. Right, so we're still looking at the urinary system. We're looking specifically at osmoregulation, which is the fancy name for the controlling of the water balance in the body. And we are looking at the influence of the hormone ADH. Now, you've probably seen something similar to this in your classes, and this is what we call a negative feedback loop, which is how the body controls the level of water in the blood. So, let's have a look at how this works. Okay, first of all, situation here. You drink too much water. You glug down 2 liters of water. What that means is the water content of your blood is then too high. The salts are too dilute. And what the brain then says, remember, ADH is your save water hormone. And if you don't need to save water, guess what? The brain won't produce ADH because you don't need to save water. And when there's no ADH, what does the kidney do? It doesn't reabsorb water, which means a lot of liquid, a lot of water goes out in the urine. And because you are now urinating a lot, what does it do? It makes the water content of your blood go back to the right amount. It makes it go back to normal. Second situation, if you have 2 packets of slop chips and you now have too much salt in your body and you didn't drink water with it, it means that because there's now lots of salt in your body, or it could be if you've sweated, in other words, you've lost a lot of water, the water content of your blood would be too low, and the brain will say, short of water, so it will produce the save water hormone, which is ADH, and when ADH gets to the kidney, what does it do? It makes the kidney reabsorb lots of water, so that when you urinate, you don't produce a lot of urine, so it's a small volume, and the urine is very, very concentrated. And because you are now not losing any water, and you're probably drinking water, that puts the water content of the blood back to normal. What I've just explained to you is the negative feedback method that your body uses to maintain the level of water in your blood. Now let's look at another system. Let's have a look at the digestive system. Now the digestive system breaks down the food and puts the food into the blood. The blood from the digestive system then goes to the liver, and the liver does the homeostasis or controlling of levels. So nutrients go to the liver, and what the liver does is it controls the level of nutrients. So that if you've taken in, for example, you've taken in too much protein, you've had a huge piece of steak, you don't need all of that, so the excess amino acids are deaminated, and only the correct amount of amino acids that your body will need, only they will go to the rest of your body in the blood. Then the other function of the liver is it removes toxins, and you probably heard the word last year, detoxification. Drugs, alcohol that you take in will go to the liver, and the liver then makes the toxins harmless and either stores them or sends them to the kidney to be excreted. Then the most important one is the liver controls the level of glucose. Okay, and this should be familiar to you. Pancreas and the liver work together to control the level of glucose in the blood. For example, if you've just eaten sweets and the sugar level is too high, insulin is produced, and the insulin, okay, so the high blood sugar promotes insulin release. Insulin is released here. It goes along to the liver, and the liver then stores the glucose as glycogen, which then lowers the blood sugar level. Insulin also tells the cells to absorb sugar, and both of those act together to lower the blood sugar level. If your blood sugar level is too low, the pancreas then is stimulated to produce glucagon. And glucagon, when it gets to the liver, will stimulate the liver to break down glycogen to produce lots of glucose, and that will raise the sugar level of the blood. You will be doing this again next year. Okay, the next system is the respiratory system, which controls the level of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. And the way it does this is if you have too much CO2 in your blood, and interestingly enough, it's not the oxygen level which sets this off, it's the CO2 level, because the CO2 level lowers the pH of the blood. That is sensed by sensors. We talked about sensors earlier in the carotid arteries and the aorta here. That sends a message to the breathing control center, which is in the medulla oblongata of the brain, and that will then send a message to the diaphragm and the rib cage to make you breathe faster and breathe more deeply, so that the CO2 level then decreases and the blood gets back to normal. And doesn't only change the breathing rate, it can also change the heart rate to transport gases more quickly, for example, when you have been doing exercise. A basic understanding of how these systems control the level of substances in your blood will help you a lot when you get to matric. I hope this has helped. Bye.